everyone, it's Lauren and I'm here today with the lovely Emily from Lady of Letters, and we're going to have a bit of a different video today and have a discussion about genres, literary genres. Do we need them? Are they useful? What kind of genres we like? Do genres make a difference about what books we decide to read? And probably some other things as well, I imagine. Yeah. So yeah, I guess the first thing to ask is, do we think genres are important at all?
I think the genres are really, really important personally, because I think that how are you meant to know what is the book about? Because I know that I'm not going to be interested in some really gory crime thriller, so I know that when they have crime thriller section on Amazon or whatever, I know not to go there.
Yeah, that's true. I always think it's a shame though, when I'm in a bookshop and I'm looking around, I normally just go to the fiction or the adult fiction section and just look around there, and sometimes I'm looking for a specific book and I can't find it, and I've asked before and they've said, oh, that's in science fiction, or oh, that's over there, or in fantasy, and I had I didn't know, or I had no idea that that's how it had been genred. So when you have different sections of a bookshop, I almost feel like that's counterproductive.
I think also it's difficult because sometimes it's well, how do you categorise a book? If it's kind of sci-fi but it's very got a really heavily romance element, do you put it with a sci-fi element, in the sci-fi element, or do you put it with the romance, or how do you kind of split a book up like that?
Yeah, especially as I do get if something's really, really niche, really high fantasy or whatever, maybe that's a specific part of the bookshop that specific people want to go to because they want to find more books in that vein. But then does that do a disservice to a certain book, like you say, if it's kind of British genres, or if something's sitting all the way at the back of the shop in science fiction, are as many people going to go and look at it?
Sometimes you can be put off a book because it's a particular genre, say The Hunger Games, which is one of my favourite series of books. I can't stand dystopia, and if someone had told me oh, it's a dystopian series called The Hunger Games, I wouldn't have read it.
Really? You can't stand dystopia?
Because basically 1984 is great, and then every other book is just kind of copying it. Well, not every other book. So many books are just oh, it's kind of like 1984, but
not
different.
Yeah, because in the same way, I think you also get so many copycat books as well, when you have a specific genre. We've all seen the kind of Gone Girl. Oh, the girl on the train is the new Gone Girl, and you've got a lot of, oh, it's the new Hunger Games. It's kind of replacing what people have already done. It's hard because I do see how genres are useful. If you want to market a book, or you're trying to recreate some success of a certain book, or lead people in that don't read that much as well. I think if people know that they like a certain book, you can say, oh, read this then, and it's kind of similar. So I guess they're useful. Yeah,
I think it can be helpful as well when you're looking through loads of books and you don't really know too much about them, and they're oh, it's kind of like the Night Circus, and I was oh, okay, well that tells me that it's sort of magical realism. It gives you a certain idea about the tone of the book as well, I think, and about not just kind of what happens, but how it's presented. Yeah,
not just, oh, it's about a circus and it's about magic. It's also,
it's
written in this sort of way. Yeah, no, that kind of makes sense. So what genres are important to you? So if you're picking a book, are there certain genres that you completely steer clear of, or certain genres that you say, when people go, what type of books do you like reading? I know, I hate it. So what would you say?
This makes me sound slightly unintellectual, but I tend to really love my historical novels, my romances, my kind of family dramas, things that are very people focused. I'm not into stuff like sci-fi, which is very much about world building and technology and things like that. I prefer stuff that's much more about human relationships, or if it's fantasy, it's kind of more magical realism, so it's more related to our everyday life rather than stuff that's really fantastical. I find it a bit harder to relate.
I don't know. I guess I say literary fiction, and I don't like the term literary fiction, because I'm just what does that even mean?
Yeah.
Because I would never not read something because it was a specific genre. I think I'm quite judgmental when it comes to covers. If the book cover is really trashy, I'm oh, I don't want to pick that up, and that's obviously a fault on my part that I'm being too judgmental. But I don't think I'd not read something because it was fantasy, or not read something because it was science fiction. It's not really about what the book's about. I like the way that books are written. I'm interested in the language in the book. So that could be across any genre. You could have something that's written really interestingly. I think that's the thing that I struggle with when it comes to genres, because I just think it pigeonholes people a bit too much, or pigeonholes the author a bit too much, because they might be so much more than their genre. So much more than your genre.
Also, because I always find it really awkward, because when I say like, oh, I like romance, I think everyone assumes that I mean like 50 Shades of Grey, like Harlequin, Mills and Boone, and I'm like, no, not like trashy romance, like good romance. And people are like, but there's no good romance. And I'm like, yeah, maybe.
That's the thing, because like we were saying, it's like the classics thing. It's like a classic novel. That's not a genre. That's just something that happened to be written a long while ago. But so you would probably say that Jane Eyre and Jane Austen and all of the like they're the same, like they're both people. Hey, you would probably say like the Brontes and Jane Austen and stuff, I guess, were romantics. Would you say that?
I think a lot of classic novels are much harder to pigeonhole than modern books, because they didn't have that same understanding of genre. So like, and also because the books were a lot longer, stuff like Jane Eyre, on the one hand it's a coming of age story, it's about her like kind of coming into herself. On the other hand, it's a romance. On the other hand, it's like a gothic mystery. So it has a lot of different genre elements, and I think that's what a lot of the best books do, is that they mix up different genres and put them all together in kind of creative, interesting ways.
So something that I think ties in with a kind of romance, like you say, when you say I like romance and people go, oh, like people don't really know what you mean. Yeah, I think the whole chick lit area of the industry is really, really undermined by its own genre. What you get a lot of female authors who are writing maybe women-focused books who get stuck into chick lit, and their book has this nice pretty pink cover on it, or like a drawing of a lady with shopping bags, and all of this
white background
and like you know, really bright green and pink writing and all this stuff. And honestly, I even look at that and think, oh, it's probably a bit of a lightweight story. Probably not that well written. Not only am I thinking that as someone who reads quite a lot, but also that's going to completely alienate any kind of male audience that there might be for the book. And I think that's just really unfair, like especially with like to undermine that kind of writing.
What I find really interesting is that the genres that are normally associated with like chick lit are things like, you know, like romance or like coming of age things. And whenever like a guy author does it and does it well, people are like, oh my god, he's completely like reinvented the genre, like something like David Nicholls with One Day, which was a nice, like lovely book, and I really enjoyed it. But like, and that was one that had massive crossover, like lots of men read it too, and it kind of feels like the genres are very like, when women write it, it's only for women, but then when men write it, it's somehow more universal.
That's so true. I hadn't even thought that about One Day, because that is a romance novel, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's what it is.
It's a love story.
Yeah. But it's nowhere near as it marketed in the same way.
I think that I think it does a massive disservice to how interesting and complex these stories can be about relationships and about people. Because something like Jane Austen, who everyone agrees is this amazing like classic author who's just taught on all these syllabuses, but like really, if she wrote today, it would be classed as chick lit, I think. Because it's all about like girls and getting ready for balls, and then like meeting guys and kind of etiquette of dating and all that sort of stuff. And that's the same sort of topic as like a lot of contemporary like chick lit authors, but we don't consider Jane Austen chick lit. One thing I think is really important is that now there's been this really big push to have more women in like sci-fi or like dystopia, things like, you know, Hunger Games and stuff like that. But I think it's equally important that we value the kind of women-focused genres, or genres that have been traditionally seen as like women-focused, as well as pushing to get more women represented in sort of sci-fi and fantasy and like quote-unquote male genres. And because I think that one thing that's really important about genres is that a genre never defines how good a book is. Like you can't quantifiably say this genre is somehow better or more valuable than this genre. It's just a case of like, you know, the different tropes that are in them, the tone, that sort of thing, rather than the actual quality of the work itself. Because I think often as well, there's this whole thing about when something's like chick lit or like a lighter genre, if it does well and it's seen as successful, people are like, oh well, it's not really like this kind of comedy. It's actually a really serious drama, but you think it's a comedy.
No, but I think that's the same with like A Song of Ice and Fire, and people are like, oh yeah, it's like fantasy, but don't worry, like it's actually really good. Like it's
not real.
Don't
fantasy.
worry, it's not fantasy. Yeah, no, I that's what I don't like about genres, because they are based on what the book's about, or the topics in the book, and not about the writing, not about how well it achieves it. And I don't know if that's how I judge books. I judge books based on whether they're well written. It doesn't really matter.
So intellectual. You're just too intellectual for genres.
I transcend genres.
I don't see a genre.
I do see how they're useful in marketing. I think if we're trying to market, I think for the publishing industry at the moment, it's just so hard to get people to go into bookshops and buy books. And I don't know. I guess that is useful if you know what your audience is. You want to market a certain book to a certain audience. But does that take a bit of the creativity out of it as well? Like you're just marketing books because you think they're sellable. Especially if you put this into packaging that looks like Gone Girl, then maybe it'll get sold.
It's always like some dark background with like a mysterious object on it, and it's like, it's kind of like Gone Girl.
Yeah.
I think as well what's really important with genre is that a genre is never the be all or an end all of a book, at least especially not a good book, in terms of the fact that you can never come up with a definition that spans all the books that are considered a certain genre. Like if you tried to pick out what makes a thriller, it'd be very hard to sort of come up with a definition that would suit Gone Girl, that would suit The Girl on the Train, that would suit, I don't know any other thrillers.
No. Like, correct me if I'm wrong, people who've read A Girl on the Train, but I've heard that it's actually not like Gone Girl, so it's just
a marketing point.
Exactly, so it's not actually that helpful to say, oh, this is the new whatever. Like I was at an event before and they said, oh, this book is really similar to Elizabeth is Missing. And it's just kind of like, I don't know if that's helpful.
Well, you've already read Elizabeth's Missing, or you haven't read it and you don't want to read it. So
it's not really, But then you said with The Night Circus, that sort of helped you understand what the book's about.
Okay, this is an interesting question. If you don't pick books based on genre, what do you pick them based on?
Well, I guess if I'm in the more general fiction area, then there's sort of not a genre. So it's just like based on the author, based on the cover. I'm sorry, but I do pick based on the cover and the blurb. But you pick them up and have a look and go, that looks interesting. What title is it? What could that be about? Maybe read the first page, I suppose. But I guess that's a bit more work than just going, oh, it's like Gone Girl. We talk about Gone Girl a lot in this video.
I guess sometimes you can tell a bit from the blurb, though I don't find blurbs very helpful a lot of the time. Basically, blurbs are either like, oh, here's the entire story with all the spoilers, or they're like, oh, there's some people and like some stuff happens to them, and you're like, it doesn't tell me anything. Yeah, because I think especially the sort of books that I read, they tend to be about like not actually very much stuff happening, because they're kind of very relationships focused, or like about that, you know, about a lot more about characters' kind of internal thoughts.
So it's not like, oh, this big bombshell happens.
Yeah,
it's not really about that.
They haven't really got like a really kind of clear premise. So I go with recommendations a lot, or just like general buzz, which is it's very hard to kind of quantify. And yeah, cover can be quite an important thing.
Yeah.
The thing is that if books weren't meant to be judged by their covers, they wouldn't have covers.
There you go. We don't really have a conclusion.
If this was an essay, I would have failed
it. We didn't really have a direction. We don't really know what our argument is. But let us know what you think about genres and like how you go about picking books. If you do them by genre, if you do them by cover, do you think we need them? I guess we do. Like
they're not going to go away.
We're not going to get rid of them, are we? But it's really difficult to try and put yourself in a box. Like, don't put me in a box. So yeah, let us know your thoughts in the comments and see what you think. If you agree with any of the stuff we've been chatting about today. Emily's channel will be linked below in the down bar. It is Lady of Letters. We have also done a video on Emily's channel, which is about Anna Karenina and Madame Bovary, and we're going to be discussing
it's like the competition between
a compare, contrast. Go over to her channel if you'd like to watch that. So I'll see you in my next video. Bye!
Bye!